When you come into the room, please, if you'd like to write your name in the chat box and where you're joining us from today, that would be nice. If you want to share why you joined today, what inspired you, you can share that in the chat as well. We'll just wait for a couple of moments for everyone to join from the waiting room and then get started.
Yeah, so everyone from the waiting room is here.
Great. So this event is part of a 6-day conference organized by the Foundation for Developing Compassion and Wisdom. And this is the first session of day 3 of the conference. If you missed any of the presentations on the first 2 days and you'd like to catch up, you can watch the video links on our website on the conference page. FDCW provides courses and resources to help strengthen universal values like humility, kindness, courage, compassion, empathy. Viewing our daily experiences through the lens of these values, we can learn to manage our negative emotions better and create the space for wiser choices. The content of the courses and resources is inspired by Buddhist wisdom and philosophy, but without any religious elements. Our courses are presented in an interactive way using scientific evidence and current theories in psychology. This system of inner learning can transform our challenging emotions, help us build better relationships, and bring a more stable, lasting happiness. And we call it universal education. So if it sounds interesting to you and you'd like to find out more, please visit our website, compassionandwisdom.org. You can browse through our free resources, you can download our free app, and you can look at what courses are coming up. So we've got Unlocking Your Potential coming up, and Building Balanced Empathy, and Discovering the Wisdom of Neuroscience. So those are in January and February, all available online. So check it out on our calendar. My name is Victoria Coleman. I'm the Executive Director of FDCW. And today's session is 90 minutes long and will include discussion groups. I am delighted to introduce our speaker today, who's Paul Wielgus. Paul joined us last year for the Big Love Festival and knocked it out of the park with a really lovely workshop, which he did. And I'm really looking forward to his session today. So just to give you a little bit of background about Paul combines his Buddhist and secular mindfulness teaching with eco-dharma practices like Joanna Macy's work called The Work That Reconnects. He's currently engaged in inquiry into Buddhist attitudes into racial justice and related issues. He's a Buddhist practitioner and teacher for more than 25 years. He has a master's degree in action inquiry from Bath University. He is MBSR teacher trained. He is trained in The Work That Reconnects with Joanna Macy, and he studied secular Dharma for 2 years at Bodhi College. He brings all these skills and experience to his work, including a series of mindfulness-based courses designed to help people, including activists, survive and thrive in these chaotic and uncertain times. So I'm really delighted that Paul's here today to share his knowledge and his wisdom and experience. So I'm just going to pass over to Paul. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you so much, Victoria, and welcome everyone. It's so lovely to see so many of you and lots of friends here. So I'm feeling in a safe place at the moment. I feel a bit of a fraud as well, actually, because I'm quite nervous about today. I'm excited, but I'm nervous because I haven't done this kind of thing for around about 4 months. So hopefully you'll be kind to me, and any glitches of any sort you'll tolerate. But you'll be used to that anyway. Those of you that know me. I'm also going to be talking quite a lot about community and connection today. So if I could make a request, I really understand people, not wishing to be visual for the whole of this, and that's perfectly acceptable. But it would be very nice if everyone could just put their video camera on just for a minute, so we can make some sort of connection with each other. I've got my camera on gallery view, so just so we can see each other's faces and kind of say hello as a community for the next hour and a half. So I'm just looking across my screen now, seeing some very good friends here, which is very nice to see. And one or two people I've not met before, but hopefully we can meet through this session that's coming up. So lovely. So just having a look, smiling. It's always good to smile as well. The power of a smile. Anyone saw Venerable Sultrim the other day and underestimates the power of the smile? Watch her recording. Unbelievable. Very, very kind of inspiring. Okay, so I'm going to share screen. Hopefully this will work. Yeah, so there we go. So the way I'm going to approach this today is that I'm inviting a number of voices in different formats to reflect and discuss this idea of joy and extinction, which kind of seems a strange paradox in some ways. So I'll be doing that after a sort of scene setting at the beginning, and then inviting you into breakout rooms to see where you're coming from around a question, which I'm going to pop into the session after the grounding. Then after that, I've been doing some interviews over the last few weeks with some good friends, and they're going to give and some of them are here, which is great. So we get them live and on film, give their views of the idea of joy in extinction. And then I'm going to cover 3 areas: joy in spiritual practice, joy in activism, and then go back to this question of joy in extinction. And then we're going to have a space at the end where I'm going to kind of introduce an element of democracy and gauge where you want to go to round all this off. So we'll see how we go with that. I hope that sounds okay with everyone. Okay, so if you go back to last year, Victoria mentioned this, and Ros and I did this presentation on compassion and wisdom in the eye of the storm, and I actually ran a workshop after this as well. And again, some of you here were attendant to that workshop. I watched the film actually a few weeks ago, and I just thought, oh my God, what's happened? What's happened to me since then? Because it seemed really clear and articulate and everything. And I thought, well, I really realized that there'd been something of a kind of small unraveling for me over the year since then. And my first sort of conclusion was that I thought I was suffering from some kind of Zoom fatigue, because I'd been doing some of these kind of events almost on a weekly basis. And I was developing a real aversion actually to be in the Zoom space. But in September of this year, having taken some time out, Ros and I went on this wonderful retreat on the land in Devon with the Green Earth Awakening crew. And it was guided by the most exquisite facilitator, a woman called Amaragita, who was chair of Buddha Field. And it was such a profound experience, and it helped me articulate to myself some of the kind of issues I've been having, which were much more than Zoom fatigue. And anyway, at the end of a brilliant week, she rounded off the retreat with something called the Shambhala Warrior Mind Training. And I was really astonished, because this has been around about 18 years. And it's kind of 24 mental trainings or intentions around the ecological crisis and activism work according to that. And I'd never seen it before, although it was actually inspired by Joanna Macy. But there were 2 particular aspects of the mind training. You can see one here, which is very clear. You firmly establish your intention to live your life for the healing of the world. But there were 2 within it that really struck home to me. And one was about balance, and about the importance of balancing the inner and the outer. And it is such a paradox, because that's what I've been training people in resilience and in maintaining their balance. Yet somehow I'd found myself out of balance. And I've been addressing that over the last few weeks, of actually bringing back some of the inner practice in my life, so I have the resilience to go out as an activist as well. But there's one other of the mind trainings which was all about the cultivation of joy. And I had a big realization. I thought, oh my goodness, that's at the heart of my problem, is that I'd actually I was actually experiencing a depletion of my joy, of my capacity for joy. And that was manifesting in a loss of sense of humor in certain situations. And those of you who know me, that we did some work on values yesterday, and one of my top values was a sense of humor. And it was manifesting, in particularly unhelpful ways in certain places. And it reminded me that going back into my, past, that I met, or I knew a monk who from the Western tradition, who actually came from the north of England in Lancashire. And that tradition was having some conflict problems. And I remember him sitting me down one day, and he looked at me and he said, "Paul," he said, "you should always remember it's important, but it's not serious." And I used that as a mantra for many years about how I applied myself to the work that I was doing. And I'm not saying the situation that we're all in at the moment is not serious. It's incredibly serious, but there's something about the way we respond to that situation where seriousness can be sometimes unhelpful. So that was a wake-up call for me. So what I'd like to do is basically go back 12 months to Victoria's introduction to the workshop that Ros and I introduced. And at that introduction, or in that introduction, Victoria reminded me of a conversation that we'd had about the 3 narratives that Joanna Macy said that we had choices which to choose in the world. And one of them was business as usual. And at that time, there's a lot of talk about going back to normal and a lot of activity from the powers that be. But there's also a lot of evidence of, not a mini unraveling like the one I'd had, but a great unraveling in the world. And then there was the third desirable narrative of turning to a life-sustaining society, the great turning. Now, I'm really sorry to say that the one that's sort of taken pole position over the last 12 months, which I think most of you will be witnessing, is the great unraveling has become greater. And this was kind of articulated in an article that Joanna Macy wrote, which you can see here. I'll just let you read that for a few seconds. So this word societal or civilization breakdown is coming very much into evidence at the moment. And that's going to be a main feature of the foundation for what we're talking about today. So what I want to do now, there's a place that when we kind of get into these situations where these truths are starting to reveal themselves, is to go back to our grounding practice, is to ground ourselves in the present moment. This is kind of a place of refuge that we can always access at these times when we may be faced with overwhelming realities or truths. So what I'm going to invite you to do for the next 5 minutes is to engage in a grounding practice with me. And then at the end of that practice, I'm just going to pop in the question that we're going to work with today for you to reflect upon, and then invite you to go into breakout rooms and just see what's coming up for you at this stage in the program. Sorry, there we go. Okay, so if you just like to make yourself comfortable, just make sure you're seated with your back straight and your feet firmly on the ground. And let's just take 3 deep breaths all the way into our belly and exhaling slowly so we could settle back into the practice. Breathing in and exhaling through our mouth and just prolonging the out breath. Breathing in and breathing out. And then just settling back on the natural in-breath and out-breath. And ensuring that we're making a firm connection through the soles of our feet to the earth beneath us. And taking your attention to your belly. So our focus point is the rise and fall of the belly as we breathe in and out. And if our mind wanders, we just smile because that's what our mind tends to do, and then gently guide our attention back to the rise and fall of each in-breath and out-breath at our belly. So now I'd just like you to relax a little bit, and I'm just going to ask the question for you to reflect upon. I'll ask it 2 or 3 times, but imagine the question is just dropping deep into a deep well of water, and allow whatever responses just to rise up without grasping them, just to seeing what's coming up for you as the question goes deeper and deeper into your consciousness. So our question is, how might we find joy in the midst of extinction? So how might we find joy in the midst of extinction? So in a few moments I'll ring the bell, and then Angela will put you into breakout rooms, and just share with the people in the breakout rooms whatever you're comfortable with, what's coming up for you when you contemplate this question. We're going to rooms for 10 minutes. Okay, and
Yeah, okay, yeah.
groups, yeah.
Ready.
Okay, welcome back everyone. I hope you had good discussions. I've been able to move the sun whilst you've been away, so I can actually see you all now. So, I see Sylvie's here in the waiting room as well. So welcome, Sylvie. So what I'd like to invite you to do now is Ros has kindly agreed to keep an eye on the chat box and really just to find out where people are. If you could enter in the chat box what's come up for you since contemplating the question and also discussing it with a few other people. So any thoughts or feelings or views that have arisen around this question of joy within extinction. And Ros is going to sort of pick out themes and share with us what's coming up. No, I don't know if she's.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, it's fine. Just waiting for a few things.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, this thing about connection and being with people. So either connection, joint endeavors, just the fact that it's not a lonely process, doesn't have to be a lonely process, but even recognizing it brings joy. This lifting, this kind of inspiring from particular situations and people. So, for example, from His Holiness, but also having hope, having gratitude. There's something around staying open and being present as well. That came up in our group, you know, being present, and somebody else, Lynn, has mentioned it as well. And this mindfulness connecting us to others. Again, interconnection, Nick's brought up. Oh, this is interesting from Ros, going for the turning and not being marooned in the unraveling. So some element of flexibility and movement and knowing when to shift maybe. And then from Wendy reminding us that it's from the Buddhist perspective, recognizing the impermanence and our role as being this kind of non-existence, the non-existence of the extinction itself. So it's not this solid, non-changing, permanent thing. Hopefully that was clear. Nick, again, focus, and also seeing this bigger perspective, seeing this bigger picture, but also a recognition of it's hard. Somebody mentioned earlier about, just recognizing it, but you do need to have awareness to begin with. Otherwise, you don't even pick up on this kind of, potential for extinction. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, groups will be important for those without family, and somebody else mentioned this kind of loneliness. So this desire, but also necessity for this connection with others or a place to go to with people. Cross-generational groups, we talked about that in our group, just actually making sure that it's representative across the groups and how that can support and nurture each other. And valuing, Shantagaba's mentioned like the valuing the preciousness of life. So I think it's really important, that, isn't it, to recognize the beauty, the richness, even more so in the face of such, escalating impermanence. And Sylvie's mentioned here this big call to change, a call, this shift makes a real change in big emotions with this big unraveling. So I guess it's how we manage that and recognizing that. The gratitude, acknowledging the gratitude for joy, because it's such a great emotion, just being grateful for that. And recognizing the best of human values in our hearts, because I guess it's easy to get tipped over, particularly when, like you mentioned, Paul, when the unraveling starts. Another one here from Nick about Nicholas about observing nature. So there's quite an interesting kind of paradox here, isn't there? Yes, it's impermanent and it's changing, but also being in the moment and seeing what is actually there in the moment, or what you notice in the moment. And yes to nature. That's a nice one. Yes to nature. So I think that's
okay.
Just one more came through from a couple more from people. Annabelle, joy as a human capacity that is always there to tap into. So this ability to go tap into that kind of quality that we have within us. And this flip side of doing it as an antidote to despair.
Okay, that's fabulous. That's so rich. Thank you so much. So yeah, the voices from people in the room, I think, are really, there's some really common themes as Ros has picked out there, and I think they will come back as we move further into this presentation. So I'm just going to go back to my screen. Okay, yeah, technology is working, thank goodness. So what I did as preparation for this project, I'd really wanted to talk to people I'm very fond of and people I really respect, and ask them. I had this idea of a 1 minute musing, and just said to them, well, look, let's talk about this question. How might we find joy in the midst of extinction? And then, if you could encapsulate it in 60 seconds, and sometimes it worked. Other times it didn't quite meet that requirement. But what I kind of was able to receive was some really profound recordings about people's views on this topic, and at some point in the future might ask them for permission to publish those, because they were really enriching and helpful. So I started with Alison Murdoch, who many of you know, used to head up the FDCW and is currently chairman of Jamyang Buddhist Centre in London. And Alison was astonishing. She just did 60 seconds, just off pat exactly. Just so those of you who know, I wouldn't be surprised at that. So here's the first musing. How do we find joy in the midst of extinction?
I think bringing together the words joy and extinction is very challenging, probably for all of us, because joy brings us up, and the word extinction personally just brings me way down. So I wanted to look a little bit more at this kind of contradiction. And so I went to the dictionary. And what I discovered is that I always understand extinction as biological extinction, the extinction of species, but it's also used in a psychological sense as the extinction of certain forms of behavior. And that got me really thinking, because it seems very clear now that it's human behavior that has led to these problems, that is creating so many difficulties for the climate and for other species. And it's human behavior that needs to be modified. And I like keeping things simple, thinking, what can I personally do? So it brings me back to the question of what behaviors do I want to eliminate in myself, or go deeper than that, what attitudes, what mistaken beliefs lead me to think, speak and behave in unskillful ways. And in addressing those, I think there's joy.
So my second guest is lovely Annabelle from Frome, who's I first met Annabelle about 3 years ago when I decided to become an activist, and she's very prominent in XR Frome, and she's also one of the inspirations for the XR Frome Blackbirds, which I want to feature later on in this presentation. So here we have Annabelle.
Well, what I wanted to say was something about the feeling of joy. And so for me, the feeling of joy is a warm, open-hearted feeling. There's a particular quality about it, and to me it's connected with love and appreciation and gratitude. And so I feel that this quality is one that's really needed in these times, in order for us not to do the opposite, which is to contract into ourselves and sort of brace ourselves against what we see in all the multiple crises that are happening, environmental and social, and it's because it's a lot, and there's a sense of that can bring a lot of heaviness and a sense of despair. But if we go into that too much, then we're closed down, and there's no way that we can be responsive, which is part of who we are as humans, and that ability of humans to be connected, responsive, open, exploratory. Yeah, so for me it's an absolute necessity to have access to all of that, all of the quality that we're talking about there of joy.
Thank you, Annabelle. And Annabelle's here today, so we're delighted she's joined us. My third interviewee, some of you know him, is Joe Meachan, and you see Joe there sitting with the police around him. And I think it'd be very difficult to get a photograph of Joe where he's not being approached by police or dragged out of a Barclays bank or glued to something. He is the most prolific activist I can imagine, and he's doing an amazing job on behalf of his passion for saving the earth and saving the planet.
I think there definitely is a connection between grief and joy, and the connection I can see, or rather I experience, is the link of, experiencing connection or interconnection. I think that's the link. It's that in grief we are feeling the pain, we are resonating with the pain of the other, right? Which is compassion. So it's kind of compassionate grief. It's feeling, and I think that's hopefully what the video you watched was, I was very in touch with the pain, the loss of my children's future, for example. Joy is a resonance or a connection with happiness, the happiness of others, the potential of others. So again, it's a connected, interconnected experience that connects us, at a heart level with other beings, and in the end, all beings. So that's a connection I think I make, is that both. It's like, I think Jack Cornfield said it beautifully. He says, when love meets happiness, it becomes joy.
Okay. Yeah.
And when love meets pain, it becomes compassion.
Yeah, I really love that quotation from Jack Cornfield. My fourth interview was with Amaragita. I mentioned her as the facilitator of the Green Earth Awakening retreat that Ros and I went on. And I was so pleased when she agreed to do the film. And there's another section from her at the end of the proceedings today.
Something about singing and dancing for me that in any situation, you can find a way to sing or a way to dance that connects you with yourself, that connects you with others, and that connects you with a whole tradition, your people, So, I think those two. I think we must never be too far from singing and dancing in our response, whatever the situation is. That we can find a way of not taking ourselves too seriously, to know that we've got something strong and important to do, but at the end of the day, if we're not connecting with others and we're not having some fun, and if we're not able to sing and dance as part of it, then I think it all just becomes a bit too dour and worthy and oppressive, really.
And the fifth of the 6 interviewees is Casper. Casper is based in Malvern in Worcestershire, and he's one of the founders of a centre there, and is also prominent in the Extinction Rebellion Buddhist movement.
All these different times, the Buddha tells us that suffering is part of samsara. And for me, what gives me joy is this might be a bit predictable, is the 3 jewels, personally in my spiritual practice, trusting that I'm receiving loving kindness from the Buddha, both the big Buddha outside of me and my own Buddha nature being a source of that joy is really, it's really uplifting. And sometimes that is bittersweet in the age that we're in, and sometimes it is just the pure sensation of being held by something. And joy in the teachings and the practice of the Dharma, the idea that we can still be graceful with each other, we can still be kind to each other, we can still be, we can still be joyful occasionally. It's possible to have, it's possible to find those moments in in loving communities, which is Sangha, isn't it? So where people come together to work for a common cause or with a spiritual practice, we can still have a sense of joy.
And finally, one of my true sources of joy is my lovely partner Roz, who's here live today and also on film here, talking about some of her work with the sharp end with refugees. Sometimes
it's just the way that you do stuff. Like, for example, like I do 2 days a week at a charity supporting refugees and asylum seekers, and the way that we work, you look at it sometimes and you think, well, it's not disrespectful, but it's joyful. We have a laugh with the service users. You know, I've been in XR communities, sometimes they're really joyous. And I think you need that to sustain a focus and an energy, so you can bring it in and be focused and concentrated. But I think the joy is the way that you do things. And I think also that loosens your grasp on feeling that you have to resolve everything and fix it and have an outcome, because actually it's probably more important just to get on and do stuff. You know, that joy is in the way that you do things, and other times actually you don't need to do anything. You just kind of need to hold a lightness in your heart and be with the situation and recognize that actually there's nothing you can do sometimes, but actually to get depressed, to get overly grieving, for some people, me included, that doesn't help me. That doesn't help move me mentally or physically when it's needed.
Okay, so before we move on to the next section, I'm just going to invite you just to sit for 2 minutes and just quietly ground yourself in the present moment and maybe reflect on some of the things that we brought into the space over the last 40 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to move on. What I'd like to do is bring 3 aspects of joy into this mix. So I'm going to sort of talk a little bit around joy in spiritual practice. And then what I'd like to do is invite you into an experience of joy in activism. So I want to kind of make this a dynamic kind of part of the program to a certain extent. And then we'll return to the Joy in Extinction challenge and maybe decide together how best to, to draw some conclusions from that, or at least to take it to the next stage. So the joy in spiritual practice, I'd like to start with just reflecting on these 4 attitudes, if you like. We see these in the Tibetan tradition as the 4 immeasurables, or in the original Pali teachings as the 4 Brahma Viharas, or the 4 divine abodes. But they're basically virtuous minds that we can cultivate. So love, or loving kindness, the metta bhavana, we can cultivate this through practice, and we can cultivate compassion and equanimity and joy. And Thich Nhat Hanh says these 4 are actually the foundations of what is true love, because they are done for the benefit of others and for the healing of the planet. We can find these qualities. We can find joy actually in this original Anapanasati Sutta, which is the full awareness of breathing practice, which is reputedly the practice that Buddha himself favored. And some of you have worked with me in the past know this is my favorite practice as well. In the Anapanasati Sutta, joy is a natural emergent property of the mind. So when we sit in mindfulness and when we ground ourselves in the present moment, at some point from our mind will naturally arise a quality called piti in Pali, which means rapture, but in effect it is joy. And I've just brought a quotation along from a meditation group at Capitol Hill, which talks about piti. Piti, or joy, is what enables us to turn the corner towards awakening. In fact, we cannot awaken without it. It's like the bridge we cross over in order to experience the ecstasy of the calming factors of calm and tranquility. And indeed, in the Pali teachings, there are what is known as the 7 awakening factors, and one of those is joy itself. But the main sort of foundation for my conversation this morning is this wonderful book. This is the Bible of joy to me. This is a conversation between the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, and the essence of this book is what the narrator calls the 8 pillars of joy. Now, 4 of these are around the heart, and they're very familiar to people in the FDCW community. They are gratitude, generosity, forgiveness, and compassion, all minds that can be cultivated through practice. But what I'd like to concentrate on is the first 4, which are 4 attitudes of mind, and I'll just go through these briefly. The first one is acceptance, and for me, developing acceptance is our ability to face the crisis that we have in front of us at the moment. So if I share with you something from Joanna Macy again, this was an article in the Resurgence magazine. She invokes the energy of Akshobhya, who is the Buddha of fearlessness, okay? And these words: do not look away, do not avert your gaze, do not turn aside. This necessity that we need to cultivate of being able to face our existential crisis. This is the start point of our practice, if you like. And one of the interesting things when I was researching this topic is that a book title kept nagging me from my past. And when I used to be involved way back in the 80s in personal development work, one book that was very popular at the time was this one, which some of you may remember, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, or Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffrey. And I think I used to kind of dismiss the book as psychobabble at the time, but I was compelled to read it as part of researching this, and I found in it some real power in that sentiment of facing the fear or feeling the fear, which led me to think that there is a lot of Dharma actually in that book. And I did a bit of research on Susan Jeffrey, and she's a really formidable woman, a feminist, and some of the actions she took in life were definitely examples of having the courage to face the fear. And quite latterly in her life, I found a quotation from her on a blog, so you might want to read this rather than me read it to you. So as I go back into the four pillars, some of these qualities are actually highlighted by the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. Before I do that, though, just the second quality of mind is taking perspective. And I was reminded of Osalita, who presented at this Big Love conference on the last day last year. And he said something then, and he said, if we change our perspective, we can change the world. And it reminded me of the quotation of between stimulus and response, there is a gap. And in that gap lies our capacity to choose. And that is actually our only freedom. And so this gap that we can create through mindfulness practice, we can then start to choose our attitude of mind. And the attitude of mind that we have available to us is choosing joy at any time. So I found that really powerful as the power of perspective as a pillar of joy. We could choose joy. And then the other two, which I think, to me, bearing in mind what I said earlier on, are really at the heart of our ability to be with the existential crisis that we have. And this is the capacity for humility and for humor. And I have a quotation from the book, which is provided by the narrator. When we have, the one other thing I want to say, these two words are really interesting, humility and humor. Their roots are humus, not hummus, but humus, which means the earth. So there's something about the groundedness of these qualities as well. And the quotation says, when we have humility, we can laugh at ourselves. It was surprising to hear the Archbishop and the Dalai Lama describe the importance of a proper sense of humor, and especially the ability to laugh at our own foibles, as essential to the cultivation of joy. And I want to move on to joy in activism. But before I do, you remember Casper from earlier on. One of the qualities Casper has, he's very articulate and able to write about what the experience of activism is really like for activists. So I'd like to share with you a poem that he wrote, which I think gets to the heart of our experience when we are acting according to our principles on behalf of the earth. May we remember the beauty of the earth and of all living things. May we remember how much we have already lost. May we remember that what we do today can change the future. Stepping out into the city, sitting in the road, occupying the places that we are not allowed to be in. May we find peace in the midst of chaos. May we find energy in the midst of peace. May we find equanimity in the midst of noise and surrounded by the police. May we find compassion for all beings. Having taken refuge and knowing we are loved, may we make space for all our feelings without being overwhelmed by them. May we meet our own anger and grief with compassion and understanding. May we meet the frustration and fear of others with love. In the midst of our own difficulty, may we remember that protest is not a right shared around the world. May we remember the different ways that we are policed in this country depending on the colour of our skin, our accent and the clothes we are wearing. There will be days when we are exhausted. There will be days when we are upset with ourselves and everyone else. Sometimes we will remember to be kind to ourselves and others through all of this, and sometimes we won't. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are present and sending their merit and love and compassion towards us just the same. May we remember that Buddhas act spontaneously with love and vigour and joy. May we be inspired by their example. In love and grief for the earth, tell the truth, act now, go beyond politics. I just really love that because I can relate to many of the sentiments in that poem. And before I go on to joy in activism, I really want to kind of point out the seriousness, if you like, of activism and the sacrifices that people make. So that the joy aspect, we mustn't think this is some way of just bypassing reality. It's part of the overall package, which includes grief, it includes courage, it includes joy. So one thing I wanted to mention specifically is these people here walked 500 miles to Glasgow. Some people came from Spain and walked to Glasgow, not because they enjoy walking so much, but because they truly believe in giving their bodies to the cause of helping to heal the world. And there's one particular person, and she's actually on this call, so I hope I'm not going to embarrass her, but this lovely lady here, Jenny, walked those 500 miles, and she shared with me how challenging it was, and how some people's feet were bruised beyond recognition from the journey. But she also said to me, it was a transformational experience in terms of the simplicity that people had to bring into their lives, in terms of the challenges of building a community, which they did. And it really seemed to me that this may be a vision of the kind of, post the societal breakdown, of the kind of ways that we will need to build community together to be able to sustain our human existence. And it really plays to me, the fact is that the politicians can't do it for us, and the leaders can't do it for us. We have to do this for ourselves. And this is an example of people actually doing that. So my heart, just really goes out, and a gratitude to all these people who did this, made this sacrifice, and especially to the lovely Jen. And then you'll get the Extinction Rebellion. So it's also about raising awareness. So the power of these artistics, I think it's being called existential creativity of the Red Rebels and the Green Spirits, of actually raising awareness. When I started as an activist in 2019, there was not the level of awareness of that there is today, and I think there's a big part of that has been down to activism, without a doubt. People don't do this just through egotistical reasons. People do this because they really care. And this example here was is just the quarter of voters consider the top 3 climate emergency to be in the top 3, up from 10th in 2017, and it's now number 1. So this stuff is so important. The other thing is, there is the opportunity to cultivate these qualities, these divine qualities of love, compassion, equanimity, and joy. And here I had personal experience of this happening, of cultivating compassion and kindness in this terms. That the Green Spirits, which are the regeneration aspect of the Red Rebel idea, and to stand in front of a policeman, actually cultivating and expressing, because they're always in silence, kindness and compassion, and to see tears in the eyes of some of the younger policemen when they realize why the activists are there. Young policemen with children who they realize may not have a future unless their leaders change their kind of attitudes. They're really, really powerful to be part of that. And one of the most iconic pictures, the Extinction Rebellion Buddhists here. I'd sat here on the far right of this, and some of you will recognize some familiar faces here. Andy Wistrix there, Caspar and Satya. I think Francesca from Jamyang is a Joy, as usual, is there. Joy is everywhere. Wherever there's some activism to be done, you'll find Joe with his love and grief for the earth placard around his neck. Just so powerful, this engaged stillness, this engaged equanimity. And then here we are with the Red Rebels again, these kind of iconic photographs. So it really get to people, and the message is very, very clear. And a journalist, an environmental journalist, James Dyke, saying that what Extinction Rebellion are doing is about love. It's actually overcoming the fear, and it's actually activate activists from an attitude of love. And if you've ever experienced, which I'm going to invite you into in a second, this activism is truly joyful, but truly effective as well. So this brings me to one of the really excuse me. Sorry about that. This brings me to one of the really powerful aspects of Extinction Rebellion, and it's the Samba. And anyone who's been involved in the Samba will know how this really fires up the joyful aspects of your being. So I'm going to ask you to do, and I hope you'll kind of join me in this. I don't think it's ever been done before, but see if we can create a Samba experience online. First time ever. So you were there, you can say. So what this requires, if you could find something to actually use to, so I've taken it off. If you can find something to use to be part of the Samba band. So I've got my Paul cup, which was given to me, and I'm gonna, so maybe you want to bang on your desk. So I'll give you a few seconds to find something. So yes, okay, so find something, you want to clap your hands and I'm just going to give you the rhythm. Okay, so you can get used to it.
I'm grounded in reality.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1. Okay, that's your rehearsal. Okay, you ready to go? Everyone ready? Put your thumbs up, you ready to go? Here we go. It's the first online Samba ever. Thank you so much, everyone. All right. Oh, I can't believe you did that. Anyway,
I believe you didn't tell us not to unmute ourselves. I was on mute the whole time.
It's okay. We can come back to it at the end. We'll give you an option to do more Samba if you wish at the end.
Yay!
Yay. Good for you. Okay, so I want to bring you to my absolute passion now. And there are quite a few Blackbirds on the call today, so I'm so delighted about that. The XR Froome Blackbirds were born, actually. The idea was born at an action XR Froome were taking against a new building development in Froome back in the summer. And somewhere, it was a beautiful sunny day, and somewhere during the day, someone suggested that we might come up with something that would help protect nature, sound the alarm for nature, and I came up with this idea of the Blackbirds. So I'm going to just show you a few images about what we're. So this is the Blackbirds at St Ives, and here they are in front of the Navy. Here we are in London during the August Rebellion. And also we've started to collaborate. So we found there were some XR starlings at Totnes. So here we are again in London demonstrating outside the Science Museum because of their sponsorship by Shell. And I'd like to show you a film, and I'm really pleased that Jacine's here, I hope I pronounced the name correctly, and Shantagaba, who were with us in COP. And Jacine made a lovely video. So just to feel, when it's joy, and it's also joy in stillness. So just this is another of our collaboration with Exile Buddhists, which has been really impact both from an internal aspect of just doing this practice, but also the impact it has externally and the message that we're trying to get through. And also it's kind of getting into popular culture as well. So we've now got a street art in Glasgow, and also again it's actually extending from that. So Reg FX is now taking his street art to Liverpool and produced this film as well of that. So you might ask, what is all this about then? What's the point, this sounding the alarm for nature? Well, just this week I saw an article from Christine Figueroa, who was instrumental in pulling the 2015 COP accord together. And she said this, and I thought, this is why we're doing in Frome what we're doing. Nature is finally recognized for its solution potential. All the emissions reductions in the world will mean nothing to future generations if we do not also protect and restore nature. Nature is our greatest protector from the worst impacts of the climate crisis. And this was recognized with 20 billion in commitments of public and private money for forest protection, a first for a climate COP. So it wasn't all bad news at COP. There were some progress made, and particularly around these issues of deforestation, etc. It wasn't anywhere near enough, but certainly, the Blackbirds will continue to sound the alarm for nature and to spread the word. And I just wanted to bring a couple of things back from the interviews, which talk about the power of the Blackbirds.
So there's a kind of, even as you speak, I can see you leaning forward slightly.
I'm so loving this exercise. I couldn't believe it. It was, and I was looking forward to coming. I've been out in Frome today, and it's really grabbed me as this, having had quite a like low key connection with some things, and the Blackbirds, they've just completely blown my mind in terms of that experience and what it can do and how it gets messages through and stuff like that.
That was quite beautiful.
But I never thought 2 years ago dancing around like a demented bird and pecking policemen's bottoms and stuff.
I think you've sort of kind of touched there on one of the I guess what's the word, stimuli, as it were, for joy, which is community, which is joint connection with like-minded people, which is just another way of saying community again.
I wanted to say something also about embodiment in all of this. It's like joy helps me to feel alive in my body, and if I can feel into my body, I know when I'm contracting or when I'm expanding, and getting to know myself better that way is it's also helping me to connect with the earth, and to know that I'm part of the earth, and that I'm a physical being, and I'm also a spiritual being, and I'm alongside all other sentient life. So, and I look at the blackbird, I see the blackbird singing in the tree, and that I can respond to in my body. I can feel that joy of the blackbird, or it sparks the joy in me. and I know there's it's here on this planet, that joy, and I'm here also, so I can feel it too.
Yeah, I've got my first soundbite there for the Blackbird side. That's perfect. So anybody who's got any idea for a collaboration, please let us know, because this works really incredibly well for us. I'm just going to move now into the Joy in Extinction, and then just open up a little bit to find out how you'd like to help me bring all this together. So this we found in Falmouth. It was on a wall when we were down there, and I'm going to read it to you because it's not easy to see the words, but they're from Thich Nhat Hanh, and this encapsulates to me where we need to go, actually, in terms of our kind of next steps forward as human beings. So only love can save us from climate change. By recognizing the interconnectedness of all life, we can move beyond the idea that we are separate selves and expand our compassion and love in such a way that we take action to protect the earth. Thich Nhat Hanh's been a massive influence on me. Just recently, actually, I've come out of the Tibetan tradition, but not come out, but from the Tibetan tradition, and in his latest book, which I find incredibly powerful, these words: we must get used to the idea it's likely, even probable, that civilization will collapse. We must face the fear. And then Joanna Macy would then kind of develop that. So again, only by facing it will we have any chance of metabolizing love, and in community getting together to create, what will come, what is left, what we can save from the actual breakdown that we're facing. And so some thoughts and reflections around that. So relying on deep truth, on facing the truth, leaning into the fear together. And this in Thich Nhat Hanh's was as this capacity to metabolize joy, to metabolize love. And that will give us, the guideline for the actions that we need to take. And he says the worst thing that can happen is to fall into despair, because that's giving up, or to go into denial. And there's this idea also of focus on all we can save. So, I think about the Camino trip again. So there's lots of beauty and joy in that amongst the hardship. And, there's a beauty of simplicity and the beauty of building community, with very diverse people. And the birds are still singing. One of the Plum Village nuns, Sister Heingeen, the birds are still singing so beautifully. And as humans, we are still singing our song. We are still dancing. We are still revealing our joy and beauty of our vitality as part of this planet, this beautiful manifestation. So that we're going to come to a period of deep adaptation or transformative adaptation. And the last film, and then we'll take some time just to sort of wrap things up. Annabelle provided this with me. These were two monks who were in the Blue Room at COP, and they talked about the sterility of the rooms and the angular tables and all these stressed people coming in with this impossible task. And these monks sat down with them, and at the appropriate moment just got them to ground, and then she got them to touch each other. And she said it was just amazing. Just, people were crying, people, just to kind of really stop the process that they were doing and revisit their humanity again. And I think, what's it, Alec Sharma, when he cried at the end, I think expressed that humanity, because we can't leave it up to the politicians. We really do have to do this ourselves. And in this podcast that Brother Embrace and Brother Spirit produced, this is, I think, a real good summary of what we need to do with regard to joy.
Sometimes think of action as only, we have to go out there and do something. But sitting here is doing something. How to meet that feeling, that's action. Maybe the most important action that we can take. So one thing that I think we tend to, it's very easy to forget in these difficult times when we face these gigantic problems, is joy. Very easy to underestimate actually the power of joy, to underestimate the power of stillness. But for us, and I'm sure for you, you know this, and I'm sure many of your listeners know, the joy is actually part of the way to meet the trauma. That if we try to go straight into it, we'll probably get overwhelmed. But if we create a bigger space, like a container, we know how to generate a feeling of joy, how to generate a feeling of happiness at any moment. That is actually what gives us the capacity to be with dignity, with the pain. So that's what I'd like to invite us to tap into a little bit now, because even though, of course, things are very, very bad, we are, at a critical hour, past the critical hour, maybe. But there's still joy, and we need it. It's the appropriate response. It's not frivolous. It's not trivial. It's actually the appropriate.
So I've realised that give me 5 months to prepare something and the content is ridiculously overloaded, but I hope you'll forgive me for that. And I also just give me five minutes more, just so we've got time to wrap this up. If you can't stay till 10:35, I really understand that. I'm just wondering now, I mean, we could spend just a few minutes just checking in small groups. We could do a plenary question and answer for the small amount of time that we've got left, or we could do a practice. So I just thought I'd offer you a democratic process. So if you would like to type in the box the numeral 1, if you would like to go into small groups just for a few minutes, or if you type in the chat box numeral 2, if you would like to do a plenary, or 3, if you'd like to do a practice to finish. So, and Ros is going to try and do a quick assessment.
Paul, just quickly, what's a plenary?
Plenary is we just open up the whole room and take a couple of questions, what with the time remaining. So we don't go anywhere. We just ask you to speak if there's time. Is that okay?
It's looking like number 3 practice at the moment.
Okay, shall we go for that then? Okay, I think that probably is good as well, so we can finish up as well with the practice. So is everyone okay with that? So I'm going to guide for probably about 6 or 7 minutes, and then just a quick goodbye. Okay, thank you. So with practice it is. And it is practice from the Plum Village monks as well, so it's very contiguous, I think the word is. So let's just take a few breaths and ground ourselves together, making sure your feet are connected with the floor beneath you. Connecting with the earth. Just checking your posture, just lengthening and aligning and centering your spine, allowing your shoulders to soften. And just resting in our contact with Mother Earth. Knowing that the Mother Earth is there for us. And we can feel that right now through the soles of the feet. Feeling sensation of contact with chair, cushion. And feeling contact with air on our skin. And as air comes into our body, we feel the love of the living green world. The oxygen coming in, refreshing every cell in our body. What is that if not joy? The joy of being alive. And as we breathe, we can relax, we can release, and we can rest. And we can give back our offering to the trees, to the green things of the world, to the continuous cycle of exchange in which we participate. So we breathe in the out-breath of the trees, and we breathe out the in-breath of the trees. We breathe in life. We breathe out gratitude. Breathing in, we know we are alive. And breathing out, we feel simple joy of being alive in this moment. Breathing in, we know we are not alone. We know we are connected to one another in so many ways. Throughout space, in this moment, wherever each of us are, we are connected. Also in time, we are not alone in time. This moment is the product of the love, of the care, the compassion inside of us. So many ancestors, so many traditions. Blood ancestors, spiritual ancestors, the ancestors of the land. They're all with us in this moment. As we breathe out, we continue into the future. We pass on all of that love, that wisdom, that joy, that insight to everyone. We give it all away and hold nothing for ourselves. The cycle continues, receiving the love, the care, the insight of the past and passing it on. Giving it all away to our children, to our students, and those we touch, our loved ones, everyone in our life. It takes just one moment of eye contact, one moment of reaching out to touch somebody's hand, one moment of microsecond pause and recognizing the presence of the person in front of us. This is an offering of our love and our presence. Maybe we can dedicate all our energy today to the welfare of all beings and the healing of this beautiful planet we all share. Okay, folks, thank you so much for today.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you so much for sharing. I mean, you've provided so many pathways for us to find our inner joy. So generous. Absolutely wonderful. Just one question. Can we close out with the Samba again?
Oh yeah, let's do that. That's a great
Yeah?
idea. Okay.
I love that.
Here we go. Yeah, let's
go.
get that up.
Paul.
Okay.
Unmute everyone. Unmute.
Unmute everyone. Just give me 1 second and we will go with the Samba. Here we go. Hang on, we need a beginning. Hold on, start again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much, Paul. Very
Bye.
nice.
Bye.
All love.
Big love to everyone. Go